All right, for those of you joining in over on YouTube, getting ready to go live on TikTok once again. Gonna see what happens. It's always interesting. I know TJ the Plumber is gonna be out there, my great mod. Does a great job for me, does a great job modding for the Rational Boomer. Just waiting for people to come in. Now we just wait. All right, for those of you joining in, we are talking news, politics. I see a couple familiar faces already. Another day of interesting news. Got a lot going on. We're hearing a couple of Donald Trump's picks may be in trouble. We already had Matt Gaetz pull his nomination. Debbie says, wait, did I catch a lie from the beginning? Yeah, you did. From the very beginning. One of the first ones in. Yeah, we're hearing some of Donald Trump's picks could be in trouble. Pete Hegseth might be in trouble, may have to be pulled from contention, may not survive the Senate. And I said that was a possibility. Apparently, the backup plan may be Ron DeSantis. Debbie says, I saw DeSantis is going to replace Pete H. I heard that too. That DeSantis may be the next pick for head of the Department of Defense. And that's an interesting pick. Don't know if DeSantis gets through the Senate. Could. I think he's less controversial than Pete Hegseth, but you never know what may come out. We did hear today the transition team has signed the documents allowing the Biden administration to start the process of the background checks and the things they need to start getting people security clearances so they can get into their positions finally. He's only, about 2 months late, but they're willing to finally start that process. And that allows the DOJ to start the work on running the official background checks on some of these nominees. And I think once those background checks, we start hearing about what is in them, I think a few more of Donald Trump's nominees are going to be out. Hegseth may be out. We know Matt Gaetz is out. I don't know if RFK Jr. survives. I don't know if Tulsi Gabbard survives. Jared never passed a background check. Do you think it'll matter if they pass or not? For certain positions, it'll matter whether or not the Senate will confirm them. They don't have a big enough margin that they can get around doing things the right way. They're going to need help getting through the Senate confirmation process. And one of the things that they were talking about early was this idea of going with an outside third party to do the background checks. And some of the senators were like, no, we don't. If we don't do the DOJ official background checks, we're not playing ball. We're not voting for them. So when these background checks come out, there's a lot of them that could be on the fence. They could end up getting sidelined. Yeah, Hegseth might be out, and at least the name that I've heard is Ron DeSantis could be replacing Pete Hegseth as head of the Department of Defense. So, and I don't know what'll happen. The other thing we heard about DeSantis is some people think he might appoint himself as Marco Rubio's replacement in the Senate and become Senator DeSantis for Florida. And that's possible as well. But some people think Donald Trump is trying to get his daughter-in-law Laura Trump in as the new senator from Florida. As much as I don't like DeSantis, I think he'd be more qualified. He can just appoint himself. Wow. I don't know if he can or can't, but as far as I know, the governor can appoint anybody. Most states. Sir, what is Tulsi Gabbard's position? She had something to do with national intelligence, and she may not survive Senate confirmation either. Um, in fact, I'd be surprised if she did. Uh, Depending on the state, when it comes to replacing senators, almost all of them allow the governor to appoint the next senator, but depending on the state, some states allow for a special election the next time a Senate seat would be up for grabs to fill out the remainder of that term. So that seat would be up in 2026. Who is a tough cookie, James? Um, yeah. Since I haven't seen, I know he's coming along. I haven't seen TJ yet. I'll take care of it myself. Uh, at some point, my moderator TJ will be in, I'm sure. Does a great job of keeping us going, keeping the riff-raff out. But depending, I don't know if DeSantis is going to be allowed to just appoint himself as senator. It's entirely possible. But he might not have to. He could be up for Secretary of Defense. Now, DeSantis is despicable, but I think he's a better pick and a less controversial pick than Pete Hegseth. Um, then there was another one too. I can't think of the guy's name. There was another one who has similar allegations to what Hegseth had. Is also probably going to be out, and Donald Trump has to pick another candidate. I just can't think of that guy's name. Um, it was the county sheriff that he picked for. I think it was the Drug Enforcement Agency head that had to drop. That guy had to drop out. I just can't think of that name. Do you think Trump should have gone to jail? Definitely. He's committed crimes. He should he should have been in prison already. He The only reason he's not is Merrick Garland sat on his hands for 2 years, didn't do anything with the investigations. If they would have put them underway from the get-go, those criminal cases against Donald Trump would have already been dealt with and done, and he'd be behind bars more than likely. But they were able to delay, and now Donald Trump fell ass backwards into the presidency again. I don't even know um, if that was ultimately Donald Trump's plan, was to actually win. Because he doesn't want to do the job of being president. He just wanted the protections of being the president. Uh, as far as the criminal cases go, I saw with Georgia, Donald Trump is asking that case to be tossed um, because now that he's going to be president, he can't have the criminal case over his head, or that's his claim. Big Spoon says, I know he's going to wreck the country. It's going to be bad. It's going to hurt. Um, you know, we're going to find out how bad tariffs can wreck the economy. It's not going to be good. We're going to have Uh, if they get inflation, if it lowers inflation like they claim, and he wants to keep lowering inflation, we're already sitting about like a 2.6 ish percent inflation. It's way down now, which is about where the Fed wants it. If Donald Trump lowers it much farther, we're going to start slipping into a recession, or we are going to slip into a depression. And if that happens, they're going to have to do some major things to fix it. But I just don't see that happening. I just don't see them doing the things they need to fix it should things slip that far. If inflation cools to the point where prices are actually dropping, instead of there being that slow climb of inflation, then you're fighting a recession, you're fighting a depression, and that will be horrible for this country. Um, yeah, we're already hearing that China, in response to the proposed tariffs, inflation result greater than 2.5%. It's like 2.6 right now. Something like that. It's really, really low. But we are hearing that China, in response to Donald Trump's proposed tariffs, is now saying a bunch of the rare earth minerals like gallium and a bunch of the other things that are used in national defense projects as well as in computer chips, they're just saying, yeah, we're not exporting them at all, period. So everybody who said, well, the tariffs will just make it so they make things in America, well, how can you manufacture it if you don't have the materials to manufacture it? And now you've pissed off one of the biggest exporters, worldwide, and they're saying we're not going to sell to you. So how does that work? How can you build something you don't have the resources to build? Not to mention the factories aren't up and running yet, and those take 5 to 6 years. Brenda says CEOs are going to keep prices high as long as they can because we, the public, is confused. Yeah, exactly. It's been corporate greed this whole time. Well, not the whole time. Yeah, they're confused on who to blame, is what Brenda's saying. And that's the thing. As long as they could blame inflation and blame Biden and keep the blame off themselves, they were going to keep the prices up. It was corporate greed. And Kamala Harris had a plan to stop corporate greed and stop price gouging. But the people on the right who complained about the prices said, no, that's government overreach. That's socialism. That's communism. We don't like that. Well, you get what you vote for. They don't know how the systems worked. All they know is that when they go to the store, things are more expensive. And they blame the people in power. And now we're going to see when their people go in and they think this is going to change everything, and those policies that get put in place actually hurt, it's going to be an entirely different thing. All we can do at that point is keep pointing it out at them, tell them we told you so, and make sure we're talking as loud as we can about where to put the actual blame. Because when the policies fail, when things go up 25%, 30% because of the tariffs, And here's the thing. One of the things to consider with those tariffs, just because their costs go up 25%, okay? We don't know what their costs are. So if they're already, say they're making $6 on something, hey, there's TJ, our moderator. I knew he'd be along. Um, but you know, if their cost is 10 and they're already charging 15, well, if their cost goes up 25%, it should cost them 12.50. You'd think they'd charge 19 and a half. But they may say, well, we're going to charge 22 to 25 because you don't know how much we were actually making, and we'll just blame the tariffs. And you won't know the difference. It's going to be ridiculous. We are going to be hurting. I'm already planning to buy as little as I possibly can if the tariffs go into effect. Because I'm not going to have a choice. A lot of us aren't going to be able to afford a lot of things. TJ says buy nothing. Exactly. Buy only the things you absolutely have to, and I'm going to put any sort of want spending down to a minimal. The country will go bankruptcy soon. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if Donald Trump tries. He's declared bankruptcy on everything else. He's only declared bankruptcy like, 6, 7 times? He's bankrupted 2 casinos. And casinos print money. Usually the only time casinos, TJ says it was 6 times. Okay. I knew it was 6 or 7. But the only times some casinos, sure, they don't lose or they don't make money. But usually they've been around for a long time and they're in areas with high competition. Like in Vegas, where there's 40 some casinos. Bankruptcy is a responsible business decision? How? How is bankruptcy a responsible business decision? If you're going bankrupt, it means you have no money. It means you're not making money. You're losing money consistently and you can't pay your bills. How is that a responsible business decision? We just don't know how much power the people of America have if they would only try. Yeah. Well, look, I don't know all the details. I'll admit I haven't followed it that close. But there was TJ, did you see the guy who just popped in? Not buying anything will only break the U.S. economy faster. What's the alternative? I mean, you go out and you have to pay, I'm going to buy what I have to buy, tariffs or no. But if it's something I'm on the fence about, I'm not spending it. No way. Well, I don't know all the details about the whole deal with South Korea a couple days ago, but there was something in South Korea where the president was trying to declare martial law and basically tried to take over the country, and within hours, the rest of the government and the people put a stop to it, and they were ready to declare a general strike, basically, and all employees across the country were going to quit going to work. And that sent a message, quick, fast, and in a hurry. The people have a lot of power if we choose to exercise it. TJ knows better than a lot of us when it comes to labor unions and stuff. When the unions you know, put their back behind something, they can get a lot of changes done in a hurry. Trump is all about doing what nobody else has, so he's out to ruin the USA. Yeah, that's very, very true. Um, yeah, he's out to do what nobody else has. Doesn't mean because no one's done it that it's a good idea. It just means nobody's done it because they knew better. Oh, I'm sure, TJ, I'm oversimplifying the effect of unions and stuff. Um, there are no strike, no lockout clauses. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot to unions and union contracts. But what was it? Just this summer, when UPS struck, weren't they able to get a major pay raise and air-conditioned vehicles for the first time? Took them all the way to 2024 to get vehicles with air conditioning because they went on strike. Something like that. I seem to remember. Um, but a lot of things that, let's see, everyone should try saving their money for a while. You do know Trump how cronies have gotten. Trump only exasperates a systemic problem in the U.S. Consumption-based economy. Yeah, I mean, we've become a consumer economy. We have been for a long time. Um, you know, if Trump wants to bring businesses back to the U.S., who's he going to get to work at those businesses? That's a big chunk of it. Uh, we don't have a lot of, with unemployment already being low, who's going to fund them? Now, that's the thing. You build a new factory, it takes 5, 6, 7 years to get that factory up and running at full steam before you're ever able to even produce anything. So, you know, we lost the know how to Asia. Not so much that we lost the know how, it's more profitable for them because people hate hearing it, but the wages over there are so much lower than what they are here. It's more profitable for them to build it there, ship it here. If most factory jobs here, they'd have to pay a decent wage to get people to work there. That's just a chunk of it. Did you see China and Mexico leaders met today to form better relations? No, I didn't. Um, but it wouldn't surprise me. You know, the other leaders are gonna be working, trying to build things up without us because they're gonna have to. They got to be prepared in case we go to the whole, uh, you know, us first closed economy style um, idea that some people are pushing for, and they got to figure out where they're going to go and what they're going to do. Um, I appreciate the follow. Oh, got another one. Um, let's see. No, we had. What did I? Let's see. Okay, that was TJ taking care of it. We had. I was talking about at the very beginning of this live. Um, Pete Hegseth might be out as the the nominee for Secretary of Defense. Donald Trump has, this would be now, I believe, the third nominee that is out before the background checks and the congressional hearings even start. That would have had to drop. They're preparing for, what they're going to do there. And Hegseth might be out. And one of the names floated to replace Hegseth as the potential head of the Department of Defense is Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida. I think DeSantis would have a better chance of making it through a Senate confirmation unless they can't find something in the background check. So I thought that was interesting. We had the final race called today for the U.S. House of Representatives. Why do you think Trump don't want the background checks? That's easy. Because some of them won't pass. Look what we've already found out about Pete Hegseth. Just from what has come up from people talking about him that know him. And they're saying, this and this and this and this and this. Look what came out about Matt Gaetz because he was under House ethics investigation. And that's already all come out. Could you imagine what a DOJ background check would uncover when you're looking into whether or not this person should get a security clearance? They want to go around it because these people aren't qualified. They wouldn't be granted a clearance if it wasn't, for Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump could potentially, for some of these people, give them interim positions or something like that and still grant them a clearance even though the DOJ may not recommend it. But he wants to go around the DOJ because he knows it's going to be bad. It's what I said about all of Donald Trump's criminal cases. If he was as innocent as he claimed, why was he always looking for everything to be delayed indefinitely? You would think he would want to get it over and done with and prove his innocence. But no, he wanted every sort of delay. And yeah, they're trying to go around the background check process. Some of the senators have said that's not going to happen. We as Americans are in big trouble. Trump is only for himself and some of his family. Yeah, not very many of his family, though. I'd say Ivanka, maybe Don Jr. That's about it. I don't think he likes Eric nearly as much as Don Jr. Definitely not as much as Ivanka. And he forgets about Tiffany quite a bit, the way it seems. Not Mary or her nephew. Yeah. None of them at all. We had the final House race called last night or today, so we now know what the margin is going to be in the U.S. House of Representatives. It will be 220 Republican, 215 Democrat. Can't think of her nephew's name. Yeah, I can't think of it either. House margin is going to be 220 to 215. Republicans will have control with a 3-seat margin. This is the thinnest margin going back all the way to the Hoover administration in 1929. Almost 100 years ago. And 2 or 3 members of the Republican Party is all it's going to take to block anything the Republicans try to do, and they can't get along with themselves. Not to mention, until special elections are held to fill at least 3 seats, maybe more, the margin is going to be down as low as it potentially could be down to 217 to 215. Do you think the Republicans would get rid of the filibuster? Without it, Senate isn't going to pass shit. Timmy? No, I don't think the Republicans will get rid of the filibuster. And here's why. I've been saying it in a lot of my lives. But Republicans just spent 4 years in the minority and they abused the hell out of the filibuster. And they know coming up, there at some point in the near future, they will probably be in the minority again. It's gonna happen. Could be as early as 2026. They're not gonna want to nuke the filibuster and get rid of it because they're gonna want to abuse the hell out of it again. Now they may carve something else out of it like they did Supreme Court nominations where you can get around the filibuster. But for everything they cut out, the next time Democrats are in power, it won't be there and they won't get to protect it. And they know eventually they will be back in the minority. Politicians care about one thing, and this goes kind of on both sides of the aisle. They care about getting reelected and preserving their own power. That's why you have, the Democrats didn't get rid of the filibuster during the first 2 years of the Biden administration. TJ says they care about power. Yep. Cannot the Senate and Congress demand a background check from these crooks? Yeah, and they have. Well, sort of. The new Congress doesn't take over January 3rd, but some of the Republican members of Congress have said already that they will not, or the Republican senators have said they will not vote for any of the nominations to Donald Trump's cabinet if they don't have DOJ FBI background checks done, the thorough background checks. Remember, prior to Donald Trump, there was never a question about the FBI and the background checks. Donald Trump only made it a problem when they started looking into him. So yeah, they're already saying they want full background checks. Um, we got okay. Yeah, we have 3 seat, or the Republicans have a 3 seat majority in the House. Now, what'll happen? Anybody's guess with those special elections. Special elections get weird. But if those 3 seats, if by some miracle Democrats pull it together and flip all 3 seats, Democrats could have control of the House but by summer. Timmy says, so at least with the filibuster in play, Social Security, ACA, etc. should be safe. Yeah. Unless they try to do something, they can do one budget bill thing a year around the filibuster through a process called reconciliation, which means you're modifying existing spending legislation. They can do it once a year around the filibuster. But I don't know how much they can do with that. But yeah, hopefully I think Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, Medicare, I don't know about Medicaid. Medicare is probably going to be safe, same with Social Security, because the baby boomers and older, the people that are collecting Social Security, is the Republicans' biggest voting bloc. That is their biggest current voting bloc right now. And you cut out their Social Security checks, you could potentially, for whatever, however time they have left, lose them as voters permanently. So, um, and then I was saying we have the House, 220 Republican, 215 Democrat, very, very thin uh, majority for Republicans. Only three Republicans need to say no to any legislation and it doesn't pass, assuming all Democrats vote against it. So some of the worst things, good chance it doesn't pass. And then when you start saying there's at least three seats that will be vacant, it's shocking they have their votes anyway. Uh, yeah, it's shocking that people still vote Republican, but um, you know, after you pull the three seats out for people who are going to be either resigning, like Matt Gaetz, or people who end up with cabinet positions, there's at least three that are going into the cabinet. Well, counting Matt Gaetz, um, that'll be vacant. Without those seats, that leaves it 217 to 215. Well, that means one no vote, and it doesn't pass. One no vote from Republicans. It's all it takes. Hakeem Jeffries could theoretically be the driving force behind everything going out of the House of Representatives. Because all he'd have to say is, hey, you, you know, these are our terms, and we'll throw our entire 215 votes behind any legislation. And you would get it to pass the House in bipartisan support. Hakeem Jeffries has a lot of play in this upcoming session of Congress. And should something completely weird happen and somehow the Democrats flip all three seats, the R won't show up half the time anyhow? Yeah. Well, and that's just it. If they don't all show up and they don't all vote yes, and if all the Democrats show up, they can run the show, and I guarantee you Hakeem's going to be having as many of them there in person for key votes as absolutely possible, and voting against all of the worst stuff these Republicans want to do. They're not going to have an easy time in the House of Representatives. They're really not. Hakeem Jeffries is going to have a lot more power than I think people realize. Timmy says, is this Pelosi's last term in office? I don't know. I thought I heard she was going to try to run for re-election again. Because I thought she said prior to this election, like 2 years ago, I thought she said she wasn't going to seek re-election. And then she did. But you're telling me that for San Francisco, that the best representation San Francisco has is Nancy Pelosi. You're telling me they couldn't find another Democrat to run in San Francisco. Guarantee you they could run anybody in San Francisco as a Democrat almost and get them elected. And the problem, and this is on both sides of the aisle, these old politicians who need to retire. We have politicians who have been in office, been in their positions longer than I have been alive, and I am in my 40s. Timmy says, I heard she's best at money raising, though. That's one of the reasons why she is staying kind of in Democratic leadership and staying where she's at. Now she stepped out of being the party leader in the House, which is why Hakeem Jeffries is minority leader. And if Democrats would have regained control of the House, he'd be Speaker and not Nancy Pelosi, because she stepped back a little bit. But she does a great job with fundraising. But as we saw in this last election, the Democrats were killing the fundraising up and down the ballot, and it wasn't enough. Kamala Harris raised $1 billion, was outraising Donald Trump 3-1 minimum, and should have won. Without her, though, Biden would have ran to the end. Biden would have probably... Well, here's the weird thing. I don't remember where I heard this, but back after the midterms, I heard she was one of the ones that talked him into running for re-election in 2022 to stay in the race for 24. He wasn't planning on running, and she talked him into running. And then he has that one bad debate. She freaks out, gets paranoid, and is one of the first ones to push him to the curb. I think if he would have stayed in the race, I think he would have beat Donald Trump. Maybe not have raised the kind of money and had the excitement built around him that Kamala Harris did, but clearly raising the money and having the excitement wasn't enough. Joe Biden, he made the decision that he made in 22 to run for re-election based on the fact that he was still feeling pretty good. Mike says, nowhere in the Constitution does it say representatives or senators are entitled to lifetime appointment. Well, that's true. And they're not lifetime appointments, but it sure seems like once they get in, it is, incumbents are very hard to get voted out. Because a lot of people go in and they vote for the person that's been in office. But the thing is, to put a term limit or an age limit on Congress, either or, it would take Congress to pass a constitutional amendment to send it to the states to get ratified, and they're not going to vote in a constitutional amendment that would limit their own power or limit their ability to get reelected and get themselves out of a job. I just don't see it happening. I would love to see it happen. Mike says, this, we as voters are their term limit if we are willing. Yeah, that's the big thing. The voters are supposed to be the ones to kind of check that a little bit. Remember, they only have power because we give it to them. The very first line of the Constitution says, we the people. Age limits, not term limits. Experience matters. Oh, I agree, TJ. To it, I would say to an extent. There still does come a point. Because, you got Chuck, I'm older than chocolate chip cookies, Grassley, who has been in the Senate 40 plus years. There does come a point when when all that experience is at the top end. You know what I mean? He'd be aged out, though. That's true. That's true. Do you think there was fraud anywhere with the votes? Seems strange that he got 74 million votes when he couldn't fill arenas. Well, he got about what he got in 2020. So that doesn't surprise me. It was similar to 2020. There are several factors that I'm saying have been the cause. Now, I'm no expert. I'm just somebody who knows a little bit about a lot. But what I think is it was a combination of things as to why Kamala Harris lost. One, she spent too long campaigning with Liz Cheney, and she lost the far left base. The far left voters that would have voted for her otherwise were turned off by her voting with Liz Cheney or campaigning with Liz Cheney for as long as she did. I think that was part of it. Some people were mad about how Joe Biden was pushed aside and how she became the nominee, and they chose not to vote for her based on that. There were some people, admittedly, who refused to vote for her because she's a woman, because she's a woman of color. I know there are some people that voted that way. The Israel war, the Ukrainian war, those two didn't help. But I didn't think they would be as big of a factor because, especially with Israel, Donald Trump's on board with letting Netanyahu turn Palestine into a parking lot. So you figure if they were really worried about Palestine, they would vote against the guy who wants to turn it into a parking lot. But it seemed like a no-brainer. And then the other thing I've been saying is a potential issue is 2020 voting was easy. Everything was mailed to you. A lot of states mailed you a voter registration card. They mailed you an absentee ballot request form. They mailed you a ballot. All you had to do was sit in the comfort of your own home and vote. And because everybody was home, you're going with the presumption that they're smart. Yeah, for the pro-Palestine voters. Yeah, but a lot of those are on the left, and they're typically a little smarter. But like I was saying, in 2020, everybody was home. And a lot of people were watching the news more, etc. People in 2020 were watching the news more because they were home. They couldn't go to work. They couldn't do anything. And they were actually paying attention. Now, they're not paying nearly as close of attention, and everything wasn't mailed to them. So when they had to go out and actually attempt to vote and, find their polling station and do all that, they were less interested. I think that's at least part of it. I think there was a lot of things that were part of it. But the Democrats better figure out what they're doing going into 2028, and they better figure it out soon. Because I'm afraid they're going to take the wrong lessons from this. I read an article well before the election that said if Kamala Harris loses, Democrats are going to shift farther to the right and be more conservative instead of going farther left. And that this one analyst was saying that he expected Democrats to get the wrong idea out of this election. And that would be, to me, that would be the worst idea they could do, is to go far right, farther right. I think going far right hurt them this past election. They should have stuck to being farther left and just said, hey, if you're a disenfranchised Republican voter, come along for the ride. If you're really that disenfranchised with Donald Trump, here's our policies. Come along for the ride. We're not going to bend our policies to bring you along. Because when they did, especially with running with Liz Cheney as much as they did, it had their people on the left, their voting base didn't show up to vote nearly in the numbers. Timmy says, I don't know, this is Newsom's biggest opportunity to run? Maybe. Could be. Newsom would be a potential pick. Kamala Harris may run again in 2028. And it'd be interesting to see what would happen if she chose to run. A former vice president running outside of the shadow of her president, coming off of 4 years of the other party being in charge. We've never really seen that. Um, as of right now, based on polling, she is a Democratic frontrunner, which would be interesting to see. Um, you could have Shapiro. We talk about a lot of times in my lives. We end up talking about who could run in 2028. You got Shapiro. You got J.B. Pritzker out of Illinois. You got Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan. Pete Buttigieg. There is a deep, deep bench when it comes to the Democrats. The Republicans, not so much. Republicans don't have that deep of a bench because who's going to get uh, the MAGA base? Who's going to be able to capture that MAGA enthusiasm? It's not going to be J.D. Vance, especially if they have to do something and push Donald Trump out of office. Um, you know, Donald Trump was joking with what's his name? Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, about making Canada the 51st state. And then over on his Truth Social program today, Donald Trump posted a picture of him standing, an AI generated picture of him, standing on a mountain range next to a Canadian flag looking off in the distance. Like he was saying he was coming for Canada or something. And he was talking about doing a soft invasion of Mexico, where they were going to go after the drug cartels in Mexico, potentially without Mexican approval. If he starts going too far off the rails like that, Republicans may have no choice but to force Donald Trump out of office, whether that's the 25th Amendment, whether that's impeachment and removal. But they may have to. And if they do, especially if J.D. Vance is part of it, like say with the 25th Amendment, there's no way he captures the MAGA base when he tries to run for his own election. It's just not going to happen. Trump should invade Canada and help those people. No. Nothing would be gained from invading Canada. Vance is the reason Musk is with him. Yeah, I'd believe that. Uh, yeah, if we actually did invade Canada, like, and tried to do something like that, we'd be pissing off our biggest ally. Oh, the thing to gain from invading Canada, more Democratic votes? Yeah, most of Canada is very liberal. I don't think they really want to add them in as another state. But if Donald Trump wanted to secure his legacy for adding a state to the Union, how about Puerto Rico? Puerto Rico passed a resolution on this last ballot, if I remember right, that said they want to pursue statehood. Now, I believe the next path for that is for both chambers of Congress to take something up and, you know, vote on whether they want to accept and allow Puerto Rico to start the process, and then Puerto Rico would have to come up with a constitution, a state constitution, and start setting up a government, things like that. But they could start the process. I mean, if Donald Trump wants to do something for his legacy, I say make that happen. TJ says DC. What I would like to do with DC is something similar to statehood, but not statehood. Give them the same benefits of statehood, but somehow call it something different. Like keep their ability. Like I don't know. I don't know how to describe it better than that, but like I don't know if you'd have to pass a constitutional amendment or something and make it so DC has all of the privileges of a state, but they're still considered just the District of Columbia. MP says Vivek and Vance's wife are first cousins. Their mothers are sisters. Both have ties to Big Pharma. That's interesting, if that's true. Timmy says Puerto Rico probably won't vote Republican, though. Republicans would never allow it. Yeah, that would be the downside. Although, I looked into it a while back. I don't remember all the details. But the only reason we have 435 members of the House right now is because of a law that was passed like 120 years ago or something like that, that set that limit up, that was the absolute number. So because of how that law is currently phrased, if they were to add Puerto Rico would get like 7 representatives or something like that, and they would start peeling them back from other states. Like California would lose a couple, I think New York would lose a couple, things like that. If anything, I could see Republicans being interested, if only to take some of the power back from larger Democratic states. But they may not be involved in, they may not be interested in the idea of granting statehood to Puerto Rico. I think the Democrats would have made it happen. But Donald Trump might be, because then he could say, well, he's the first person in 50 plus years since Hawaii came in to add a state to the union, and he could, take all kinds of credit and take a victory lap and everything else. Like, for a guy who loves his ego, I could see him getting behind it for the ego boost if the right person was in his ear. Pat him on the back, tell him he'd look like a genius for doing it. That people would remember him for, 50 to 100 years for being the guy who gave Puerto Rico statehood. That would be like, I would love to see Puerto Rico get statehood. That would be amazing. He wants Canada. Yeah, he was talking about it. That would be horrible if he actually tried to make it happen. It wouldn't go nearly as well. Timmy says PR has nothing in Musk's interest. That's true, but I don't think. I don't think Musk is going to be an advisor to Donald Trump for very long. They're going to butt heads. Their personalities are going to get in each other's way. And that'll be that. Musk will be out. How have you been better off under Biden than under Trump pre-COVID? Simple. Trump didn't do a damn thing pre-COVID. The only thing they passed pretty much in the entire Trump administration was tax cuts to wealthy people. They didn't pass anything. He was riding on Obama's economy. Trump is going to get jealous over a real billionaire. Yeah, Donald Trump is only a billionaire because of smoke and mirrors. Most of who he's appointing now will be out eventually. Almost all of it. Up to you on that. And now he'll be riding off Biden's economy. Yeah. Yeah, he'll be riding off Biden's economy for a bit. Except the difference this time is they're going to, if he puts these tariffs on almost immediately, and it crashes the economy, we can point to a policy change this time where he did something that caused it. Last time he didn't do a damn thing, so nothing changed, so he got all kinds of credit when none of it, he didn't have any policies. How can we keep him from getting rid of Social Security? First of all, call your senators if you think it'll help. Call your representatives. Especially if you have a Democratic representative, call them. Email them. Let them know to stand and fight for Social Security. Now, they're probably going to anyway, and I've been saying this a lot in my lives. The margins are so thin in both houses of Congress that they can't fuck around with this stuff too much. They can't lose very many votes. And there's probably 3, 4 at least Republicans in the House that realize if they gut Social Security, that they're never getting reelected again. The biggest chunk of Republican voters are the baby boomers. Out of every demographic that votes Republican, their biggest percentage of voters comes from the baby boomers or older. And you start cutting them out of their retirement, out of their Social Security, they are going to have a conniption, and they will never vote for the rest of their lives for a Republican. They'll remember it. Now, they forgot who got them Social Security because a lot of them, bought into the Republican bullshit. And if they'd remember, under Reagan, when these people were in 18 to 40, he went, oh, there's this big chunk of money sitting here that we can borrow from. We'll pay it back eventually, we promise. And they never did. And they gave Social Security a gut punch. But I've been hearing for 20 years that Social Security won't be around in 20 years. Well, here we are 20 years later. It's still here. And I think it's still, they're going to find a way to save it. They're not going to cut it. They may make some small tweaks to it, but I don't think they do anything major to Social Security. I don't think they do anything major to Medicare. Just because they can't get reelected. I say it a lot, but that's the truth. Ultimately, TJ says they want to. Well, they may want to. Part of them might. But I think that's where the reasonable ones have to come in and say, hey, you don't need many in each chamber to say, this is going to cost us votes if we fuck with this. And, that's what they're going to have to do. Hakeem Jeffries in the House of Representatives, if he says to, if he could get 3 or 4 Republicans to go along with him and say, hey, this is dumb. You guys will have a hard time getting reelected if you kill Social Security. Side with us. We'll kill the bill. Only needs about 3, and he throws all 215 of their votes against it. If they negotiate right with Republicans, they only need a couple, and they can kill almost anything they want. Timmy says Department of Education may still be up in the air. Again, I don't think so. Because that would have to go through Congress. And I believe destroying a government department and eliminating it, I believe, would have to get past the filibuster. And they're not going to get 7 Democrats to agree to get past the filibuster to bring it up for a vote. They're going to block that. Timmy says, oh yeah, good point. Yeah. And the thing is, a lot of the red states, the Republican states, end up using benefits from the Department of Education. At least some of the members of Congress that are in those red states are going to have to think long and hard about, you know, going back to their states if they were to kill the Department of Education. MP 2025 has got a link there confirming Vivek Ramaswamy and Usha Vance. Okay. I just hadn't heard that. I hadn't heard that they were first cousins. That is interesting. I wasn't doubting you. I just hadn't heard it. Oh, goodness. Um, so, yeah, there's. I keep saying it, but these Republicans are going to have to go back to their districts and get voted in. Let's see. MP says, I love truth, so I back up info. I appreciate it. I try to back, if I can remember my sources, I try to cite them when I can. Timmy says, what do you think Biden's biggest F up was? Israel appointing Garland to AG to run for re-election. Israel, he was in a tough spot with Israel because Israel is an ally and there are some things we have to do because of treaties, things like that. He was kind of limited on what he could do. As far as running for re-election, when he chose to run for re-election, everything looked good. He had just come off a rather successful midterm, even though we lost the House. We were supposed to lose the House by, 40 or 50 seats in the midterms. We lost it by, they had control by 5. They were supposed to have control by 40 or 50 based on all polling and all available data. And he had just had one of the most successful runs of, any presidential candidate 2 years prior. Running for re-election at that point looked good. Might have been a script. I think appointing Merrick Garland was part of it. But I think when it came out that, Merrick Garland hadn't done anything for basically 2 years and was trying to not be political and go after Donald Trump because it looked bad politically, I think he should have shit-canned Merrick Garland at that point, replaced him with anybody else. Merrick Garland did us no favors as Attorney General. I was excited for Merrick Garland at first because I thought he was going to be a no-nonsense, follow the facts, rule of law kind of Attorney General. But he failed miserably in that job. Let's see. Timmy says, I think they knew it was going to happen, could have gotten rid of Bibi. You're dealing with, I don't know. I don't know how much influence Biden really could have had over, the Israeli prime minister, things like that, as far as forcing him to pick somebody else. That's giving him a lot of credit. I don't know how much they could have actually gotten done. But, yeah, Merrick Garland did us no favors as Attorney General at all. I was very disappointed in Merrick Garland. Hell, Donald Trump needs an Attorney General that's on his side. The Rational Boomer said it in one of his TikToks. But it's true. If you want somebody that's on his side and going to give him all sorts of favors, leave Merrick Garland where he is. Merrick Garland has helped him out more than his own attorneys have in some cases. He slow-walked the investigations for 2 years. Didn't do a whole lot. Wasn't until he appointed Jack Smith that things actually started rolling. Jack Smith took an investigation that was basically stalled, and in 10 months had it churned to the point where a grand jury was issuing indictments. That's ridiculous. That was ridiculously fast. Normally, the wheels of justice, as we have found out, move ridiculously slow. Brazil put us to shame. What do you mean? I don't know what you mean by that. I don't know what you mean about Brazil putting us to shame. Um, when they tried to overthrow the government. Oh, how they responded to it? Yeah, I wasn't following that one as close as I probably should have, but they responded really well to that. They prosecuted right away. Yeah, they should have. There should have been a lot more done. Um, I thought for the first 2 years that this case had been chugging along behind the scenes, going for January 6th, because it happened right there on national TV. You could see what happened. You figure there wouldn't be a whole lot of investigation needing to happen, and you know something would turn up. Well, then all of a sudden we get to 2022 in the midterms, still nothing. And I believe it's actually on my podcast appearance with the Rational Boomer way back then. I said I expected after the election was done that Merrick Garland was going to go after sitting members of Congress. He wanted to wait till after the election to deal with it, and then he'd go after them. And then we find out he hadn't even done a damn thing. He sat on his hands. He didn't appoint a special counsel until the J6 committee turns out and issues their report. And then there was all sorts of public pressure saying, oh my God, how bad is all of this shit? Why isn't Merrick Garland, why isn't the DOJ doing something? And then he got off his ass and appointed Jack Smith. He failed as Attorney General. Completely failed. Five cops died because of J6 and Dems were still silent. Exactly. What do you think about the big oil CEO telling Trump there'll be no drill baby drill? I'm not surprised. They came out and said, hey, we can't, drilling more isn't going to help. And they were saying that ahead of the election to some extent. Timmy says, cop killer Don. Why didn't they label him? They should have. That's one of the things Democrats have always been horrible at is messaging. They all failed, the entire administration and the DNC. To some extent, I would agree. Oil field and refineries are at capacity. Yeah, that's the problem. I'm so tired of them saying we have to take the high road. It's past time we throat punch. Yeah, when they go low, we go high. Bullshit. When they go low, we get in the mud with them. They get someone to drill baby drill. I don't know what you mean by that, but we'll just deal with that. Yeah. What do you think of healthcare CEO that got killed? I saw it happened. I don't know much about that whole story as to why or anything. Um, I know we got to do something with healthcare in this country. It's ridiculous. Um, And Donald Trump's health plan, should it come to fruition, is going to be the little bit we know, if what JD Vance was saying is even close to what they're going to try to do for a healthcare plan, is going to be horrible for this country. And that was risk pools, where basically if you're higher risk and you need coverage because you're doing whatever, and it's, they know they're going to be paying money, you go into a pool with a bunch of people, and you all are in that same category, and you're just going to be paying through the nose through healthcare. It's not a good plan. The only people it helps are those that are extremely healthy that never go to the doctor. Timmy says U.S. is drilling as is. Don't need Trump for that. Yeah, we're already drilling. Uh, way more. We're already drilling way more than we ever have. We're producing more than we ever have. Matthew says Obamacare is, I'm guessing you mean horrid. Okay, question for you. What do you think of the Affordable Care Act? What do you think of the Affordable Care Act, Matthew? Throw it out there. Let's see what you say. Reminds me of auto insurance high risk pools. Yeah, exactly. I know people have had to get the high risk insurance, and they're paying, you know, multiple hundreds of dollars a month because they did dumb stuff and they can't get insured anywhere else. Donald Trump's campaign promises remind me of the kid in high school running for class president saying no more homework and vending machines in every classroom or some bullshit. Stuff that they could never make happen, and then they gets voted in. That's what Donald Trump is. He says the most ridiculous stuff. I remember hearing this dude was like, we need to get rid of Obamacare, but then said we keep the ACA. Yeah, that's the exact point. Covers nothing. I've had it. I've had a $5,000 balance every year. Um, I know there are better plans than that on there. Covers nothing till you get to 5,000. Well, that'll be the last we heard of. That'll be the last we hear of Michael. He's gone. Seen and ignored. I haven't looked at the actual plans because I've had other options all the time, but I swore there were better coverage than that on the Affordable Care Act exchanges. Yeah, that's the weird thing about Trump supporters. They um, they won, but they're still geared up for a fight. They come in and they don't add anything to the conversation. They just come in and do like that guy did, and just say, uh, the same thing over and over and over and over again. Biden did the right thing to pardon his son. Lost his wife, daughter, and his son Bo. Yeah, um, I agree. Biden did the right thing, and he only pardoned Hunter because of Donald Trump was coming in. And even after they win, okay, they won. Republicans have won everything. They finally got their way. They have their president. They have the House. They have the Senate. What did James Comer come out today and say? Because now of the pardon of Hunter Biden. Well, we're not done with Hunter Biden yet. Now he can't take the fifth, and he can come before Congress and he can testify because we got all sorts of questions about the Biden crime family we need answered. They won. They spent 2 years digging into Joe Biden, found nothing credible beyond maybes and, well, I think, so we got to keep investigating. And they still want to go after him. They still want to go after Hunter. They still want to go after Joe. They won. But they want to find something to tie to Joe Biden that's just as bad as everything Donald Trump did. Did a TikTok on it earlier, and I said they're so used to covering for the crimes of their guy, they're convinced everybody is as dirty as them. Any parent would do the same for their child. Trump would do it too. I would disagree. I would say almost any parent would do the same for their child. I don't know that Trump would. The only reason I think Trump would pardon any of his children is if by pardoning them, it somehow got himself out. Yeah, by pardoning his kids, it would have got him out of trouble. He might do it. Or if it was Ivanka. If it was Eric, he probably wouldn't care. So yeah, we're talking news, politics. Um, but no, for those just joining in, but yeah, Republicans, they're not done with Hunter Biden. Tim says if it was Eric, no one in the world would care. Yeah, exactly. Biden pardoned himself also. Haven't seen that. Haven't seen Biden pardon himself. As far as I know, Biden has nothing to pardon himself for. Committed no crimes, therefore doesn't need a pardon. Yeah. Well, that's enough of that nonsense. Yeah, the 2014 pardon only covered Hunter Biden. And it was just a way to protect Hunter because they're not done digging into Hunter Biden. Republicans have nothing better to do. It's not like they should be worried about using their thin majority and passing something to help the American people. But instead, they're going to spend the next 2 years, probably, still digging into Joe Biden. Hell, it wouldn't surprise me if they're going to Bring Hillary back to talk about her emails one more time. How are you? So, how is Trump going to end the war in Russia and Ukraine in the Middle East? Well, his version of peace for the Russia Ukraine war involved Russia keeping all of the territory it's already kept, that it's already, claimed in this war. And that was basically it. It was, we're going to come to an agreement. We're going to end the war today. Ukraine, you give up all the land Russia's claimed. We'll call it good. That was his peace plan. Ukraine said, "Yeah, go fuck yourself." And as far as how is he going to end the war in the Middle East, he's all in favor of Netanyahu turning the Gaza Strip into a parking lot. So his version of end it is let Netanyahu do whatever he needs to do to end it the wrong way. I know it's more than realistic Hunter was pardoned as hundreds of thousands have gotten out of the same. Well, that's just it. That's just it. If he wasn't Joe Biden's son, these charges probably never would have gotten these charges probably never would have gotten brought at all. At all. It was a couple of tax charges from not filing his taxes, which he didn't file them in a timely manner, but since has filed them and paid all back penalties and interest. Okay? So the taxes were dealt with. He even admitted to not filing them on time, but he paid the penalties and interest. And then as far as the gun charge, he lied on a gun form. Most of the time this only gets brought up, it's a secondary charge that they tack on to other things. Trump is a con man extraordinaire. These people doesn't care that he lies, cheats, and steals. Yeah, exactly. He's convinced them that everything he does is right while robbing them blind and getting them to keep sending him money. People lie on that particular item on the background check form every day. Exactly. And they made the case in court, Hunter Biden's defense team did, that at the particular time he filled out the form, he wasn't under the influence of, drugs, and that he didn't believe he was an addict at that particular moment. Because addicts don't realize they're addicts. So he didn't intentionally lie on the gun form. But, it is what it is. That was a case that never would have been brought. They had already had a plea deal worked out that would have led to, it was a couple of misdemeanors and no prison time. And Republicans in Congress lost their ever-loving minds and pressured the special counsel to reject the plea deal and go harder against Hunter Biden. Just because he is Joe Biden's son. Because they were trying to embarrass Joe Biden and use that as some kind of a gotcha. Like, they wanted us to go, oh no, we're not going to vote for Joe Biden because his son's a felon, while they voted for an actual felon. Give me a break. I'm a little fired up today. And I don't know why. But yeah, it's dumb. This whole thing is kind of dumb. Those charges never would have been brought if it had been anybody else. Rita says, fire away. Yeah. I mean, James Comer in the House said they're going to continue to investigate Hunter Biden because now that he's accepted a pardon, he can't he can't plead the fifth. So they want to they want to call him back before Congress. I might add, recently lying on the gun purchase federal form 2 months before it was thrown out. Then Trump didn't mean to lie about anything. Yeah. As far as what that MAGA supporter was saying is there's a big difference between Hunter Biden and Donald Trump. First of all, with the 34 felony convictions in Manhattan, if Donald Trump would have just wrote in his ledger, in his books, the payment to Stormy Daniels was NDA payment. Done. There was nothing illegal about that. But no, they had Michael Cohen pay her attorney, send the wire over, called it legal fees, which it wasn't. Then when they went to repay Michael Cohen, they came up with a repayment strategy and wrote that in the books as legal fees, which it wasn't. If he just would have paid the money to her and called it an NDA payment, that would have been the end of it. For at least that case. But then as far as the 4 felony charges out of D.C. for inciting an insurrection and lying on those forms and trying to file false forms with the government, well, they're not anything close to what Hunter Biden did. And then you have the 34 felony counts out of Florida for mishandling classified documents, where they were stored in a bathroom at Mar-a-Lago and in a ballroom and in his private residence, when he wasn't supposed to have access to those materials anymore. They're not even close to the same thing. He was selling pardons. Yeah, supposedly Trump was selling pardons. They need to take the word above the law out of the dictionary because of Trump of the Supreme Court. Yeah. Yeah, they do, because clearly Donald Trump so far has been able to be above the law. Double jeopardy is attached to any related charge to Hunter if they try to retry him on same or similar. Well, beyond that, he's got a pardon. And it's effectively a 10-year blanket pardon. So for any crime they may dig up that happened from whatever date going back to 2014 till now, if they come up with anything, blanket pardon. Automatically dismissed. And Joe Biden's not the only one to use blanket pardons. I mean, Jimmy Carter used them to cover anybody who dodged the draft. A lot of the presidents do, but Joe Biden also is very limited so far his use of the pardon power. Counting Hunter, he's only pardoned 26 people his entire presidency. A lot of presidents pardon a lot more in 4 years, usually to at least several hundred. Colleen says, I believe Joe got surprised for them. Uh, Curious to see what that surprise would be. I don't know what he potentially could do. Um, be interesting. Trump selling pardons. Last I knew, 35% of Trump's pardoned have done the same or other crimes. Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of people claiming that Donald Trump was selling his pardons. Rudy Giuliani was involved in that scheme too, apparently. Basically, you pay him enough money and Trump would uh, pardon him. Now, according to the Supreme Court, since a pardon is an official act of the president, well, if he goes and sells a pardon, you can't charge him for anything involving an official act. So technically, he could take a bribe for that pardon, and that's perfectly legal. The Supreme Court got it wrong. And of course, the Democrats got in their own way. They introduced the No Kings Act, which was supposed to reverse that Supreme Court decision and say, no, we don't have a king. There is no presidential immunity. There never was. Well, what do? They introduce it. Sure, it gets introduced in the Senate. Got read on the Senate floor. Made a great headline for a day. And then they said, well, it probably won't pass the House. We're not going to do anything with it. We're going to sit on it. Not a big deal. Oh, we're going to win in November. Not a big deal. We'll have the House. We'll have the Senate. Kamala Harris will be the president. We'll just push it through then and we'll sign it then. So that's all they did. They introduced it. It has never been up for a vote. And it will not see a vote probably until after midterms in 2026. And even then, guarantee you Donald Trump doesn't sign it. J.D. Vance, if he's president, he might sign it. Depending on how he becomes president and the circumstances there. But Democrats wasted an opportunity ahead of the election to put pressure on the Republicans. But that's kind of what the Democrats do. The recidivism rate is massive of Trump's pardoned people. One only took a month after released to refund. Exactly. I mean, and the thing is, Donald Trump can't pardon state crimes. So somebody like Steve Bannon, who has got a court date coming up this month for his Stop the Steal fraud, Donald Trump can't pardon him for that. He potentially might not have any part of the incoming administration because he could be in a New York State prison for fraud. And yet somehow the American electorate ended up voting him in. Joe Biden can pardon all the people Kash Patel has on his list, all 60 people before Trump gets in. Is that the list that Donald Trump once investigated? All of his enemies? Because, yeah, Joe Biden could pardon them all. But the only reason I could see Joe Biden not pardoning them is because accepting a pardon means you're admitting guilt to something, that you did something wrong. It's one of the reasons I don't think Donald Trump would ever accept a pardon. And speaking of Donald Trump and pardons, fuck Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin coming out, and any other Democrat who says Joe Biden should just pardon Donald Trump for the good of the country. Fuck that shit. That's part of the reason we're in the mess we're in now. No, Joe Biden should not pardon Donald Trump. That's bullshit. If Ford hadn't pardoned Nixon, We wouldn't be in this set. Nixon should have been held up to a higher standard and charged. It was $2 million for a Trump pardon plus whatever the broker charged to get it in front of DJT. Not surprised. I think that was the rate I heard too. Frida says, gasp, I had not heard. No, I'm not saying that Joe Biden has not pardoned Donald Trump. But there are, well, Joe Manchin for one, and a few other Democrats that are saying, for the good of the country, Joe Biden should, before he leaves office, just pardon Donald Trump. All is forgiven. You know? No, fuck that shit. Donald Trump is a criminal. He should not get a pardon. I don't think Trump's ego would let him take a pardon because he'd have to admit he did something wrong. And Donald Trump can't do that. He can never admit he's wrong. So, on that note, I'm going to wrap this up. Um, as always, I have recorded my live. It will be up over on my YouTube page. I am Analytical Iowan over on YouTube. I've got a link tree in my bio. So for those that came in late, want to catch the whole thing, it is up over there. Or it will be as soon as I get it uploaded through YouTube. Probably later tonight, early tomorrow. Um, so you can check that out. I also want to remind everybody that is probably already aware. Um, I do guest over on the Rational Boomer podcast. If you haven't checked out the Rational Boomer podcast, you should. Today's episode, the one for Wednesday, I am a guest on the podcast. We talked for about an hour and a half. It's just me and Mike, the Rational Boomer, having a great conversation. So I encourage you to check that out. You can find the Rational Boomer here on TikTok. Just search Rational Boomer. Make sure it is the account with over 400,000 followers. He does have a few copies out there. And he's got a link tree in his bio that will lead you to everywhere that the podcast is. Otherwise, search Spotify for Rational Boomer or search for the Rational Boomer podcast on YouTube if you'd prefer the video version. Again, I was today's guest. It was a great conversation with Mike. It always is. And I know I'll be back on in a week or so. And tomorrow, I believe, is probably going to be another guest show. Typically, Thursdays are with a routine guest that does a very good job. She's an amazing woman. If Old Soul is on tomorrow, it will be a great show. That's the typical Thursday guest. So I recommend you guys check that out. Like I said, this live will be up over on YouTube as whenever I get it done. I want to thank TJ for doing such a great job moderating, keeping us up, keeping the most of the Trump supporters out of the way because they don't add anything to the conversation and they just get you reported, get you taken down, things like that. So once again, I want to thank you for joining me and encourage you to check out my YouTube page if you want to catch the entirety of the live if you were not here for the rest of it. And I will catch you the next time I go live. All right, just wrapped up. It was a good live. So hope you guys enjoy it. And I will catch you the next time I go live.